Hong. I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us on this in this webinar introducing the Duke collections on the memory project. So first of all, I just would like to thank our sponsor, the Asian Pacific Studies Institute, APSI, at Duke University, and the Asian and Middle Eastern Studies Department, particularly Critical Asian Humanities Master's Program at Duke University, as well as Duke University Libraries. And we are also very pleased to become sponsored by the Council of East Asian Libraries CCM workshop series on digital projects of Chinese studies. And then before I start, I just want to give Alex and Xiaojuan a shout out. Without their support, this is not gonna happen. Really, it was very big endeavor, and we thanks everybody's participation. So I'm just gonna take a couple minutes here to give a very brief introduction of the memory project, which is started in 2010 by the, you can say the foundational figure of Chinese independent and documentary films, Wu Wenguang. It actually is composed of two major components. One is oral history, which we're gonna focus on today, and the other part is the creative documentaries that those filmmakers also have been working on. So I just want you guys to keep this in mind, that this is actually a two-pronged type of project, but what we are really wanting to showcase today is the oral history archives housed in the Duke libraries here. So I think most of you who are interested in this event have a little idea that the oral history actually started out by documenting the Great Famines between 1958 and 1961, which in mainland China's history books has been called the 3 years of natural disasters. Which is actually a very interesting way of glossing over a major tragedy, we can say, which we estimated between 20 to 43 million deaths. And it really is an interesting phenomenon which we actually are pretty familiar with. This is questions of history and memory, and how official history oftentimes does not really tell the true stories. And the stories oftentimes are lost or forgotten, if not retrieved and preserved. And then, of course, the oral history through its process begin also to cover great events such as Great Leap Forward, the land reformer collectivization, and the full cleanup movement, and then, of course, the Cultural Revolution between 1966 and 1976. All right, so what's so interesting about this oral history is that it's conducted by the team that Wu Wenguang had organized composed of young filmmakers. Their mode of operation is for the young filmmakers to return to their home rural villages and then seek out the elders and ask them to tell their stories about hunger. So the idea of hunger would be the major emphasis initially. But as I said, as the project began to grow and developed, that it began to cover much more, and then reveals much more about China's history and its people. So we're very fortunate to be able to house this collections at Duke University. Just very briefly, when Wenguang started the project in 2010, and by 2011, there started to have really sizable collections of oral history, as well as, like I said, the creative documentaries that came out of the oral history project. So we got in touch, and we wanted to introduce the project to the world outside of China, and asked if we could help make that happen. So very luckily at Duke University, I was able to raise enough funds to invite Wenguang and 3 younger filmmakers, one of whom you will meet later today, to come to Duke in 2012. And then during their residence here, we were able to discuss with the Rubinstein Rare Books and Manuscripts Library Director Naomi Nelson, and then with this really pleasant and productive and most importantly sincere intention to collaborate on a long-term basis, Wenguang and the Memory Project Collective agree to let Duke Libraries house the entire oral history materials. And then the moment we receive those materials headed by our Chinese librarian, Luo Zhou, who also will be giving you more detail about the collection in a minute, we were able to begin to make the collections accessible. I think that is one of the most important aspect of this collection, is that I always like to, almost like brag about it. At Duke, the idea is not just to preserve, but it's actually to help to make it as accessible as possible. So with the digital archives, we're able to do so. So like I said, the more details will be introduced to you in a minute by Luo Zhou. So I just want to say a few words about what's important and what's special in my mind about this project. So many people who are familiar with this project, often we call it participatory, observational, or interactive kind of ethnographic practice. But I would like to actually ask us to sort of think about it for a second here about the questions of history and memory. So in this case, I think there are 4 different modes of historical historicity, so to speak, at play in this particular project. First of all, we can say that it is a personal history. As I mentioned, that it is actually something that is other than the official history. Beyond that, it actually is not just an alternative history, it is actually the stuff of the history, but it is based on the personal, based on memory. It validates lived experiences and personal memories, and it makes visible the hidden and the repressed, as well as the fractal and the incomplete. So there's a tension between history and memory, and this tension is pushed to a productive height through this oral project. Second, I would like to think of it as a kind of intimate history. So filmmakers going back to their own villages, it is a kind of self-ethnography, but it actually has to be maintained at an intimate distance at all time. That distance is between generations, the interviewee and the interviewer, and with that, different kinds of education, classes, ages, and so forth. So it's always kept on the edge of comfort and discomfort, strangeness and familiarity. In other words, there are at least 2 lines of histories at the same time, the interviewee and the viewer approaching each other in a very intimate way, but never subsuming the other. So the second is the intimate history. The third, I think this is a kind of creative history. Multiple interviews over the years of many filmmakers who return to the village more than once. But the most striking example would be Meng Qi, who will be telling us her own tell us more about the creative process in a minute, has been going back to her village for 10 years straight, and even built a house there and had a base for a future endeavor. So this kind of ethnography oftentimes triggers new memories and different iterations of histories over the year. And so the desire for history is its creative force. And that desire is, of course, multivalent: the desire to find history, the desire to tell stories, and the desire to form a larger narrative that is constantly subject to correction, amendment, and even forgetting. All right, so we cannot forget about the questions about forgetting. All right, and finally, I think this is a kind of generative history. So the filmmakers' own reflections of their involvement in the contemporary context in which the intergenerational dynamics often, I should say, always create new context and continue to do so through the creation of the documentary films, dance, theater performances on the one hand, and the collaboration and collective action with the villagers on the other. And then finally, I think is through the uses of the archive when it's made publicly accessible to anyone who is interested in finding out. So with this, I just want to turn the floor to Zhou Luo to actually explaining to us the uses of the archives at Duke University that our efforts in making it accessible and public. So Luo, please take the floor.
Thank you, Guo-Juin. Thank you so much for the introduction to the project, and also the relationship between the project and the library. And I would like to share my screen. Okay. And as Guo-Juin explained that we are so honored, so glad that these filmmakers decided to place their raw footage interviews with Duke University archives, Duke University libraries. The archives started to arrive at Duke starting in 2013, and it continued today. So each year we'll roughly get some new batches of interviews that filmmakers are done, and we process them and they come in. And so what do we have in the archive? We do have a lot of things, and we have many filmmakers who have contributed we have many filmmakers who have contributed to the project, and we have lots of villagers who have been interviewed by these filmmakers, and we of course have tons of videos. The initial challenge for us, for the library, is that these interviews were done in a dialect that most of them are very difficult or challenging to understand, even for native speakers like myself. And so gradually these filmmakers are supplying us with transcripts, which is wonderful. So far we have more than 300 transcripts, and half of them have been translated into English. We also have something I call here is blog. We have almost 600 blogs, and these are blog posts by these filmmakers. From the very beginning of this project, filmmakers in this group maintained a blog where they post about the stories they heard from the interviews. And they also add some personal reflections about the village, about the interviewees. And a third of these are translated into English. We also have 181 emails from the filmmakers. We have actually a lot more emails, but we selected these many emails when filmmakers do talk about the interviews. And you will see more personal reflections on the interview, on the village and everything. And we were able to process this large amount of materials thanks to the generous support of the Innovation Grant for East Asian Librarians from SAIL that I received from 2015. So I mentioned the blog. I do want to give you a quick show of the blog. So we decided to archive the whole blog in 2016, but when we started the work, we found the blogs are gone. But luckily we have all these posts sent to us directly by these filmmakers. So we managed to piece them with, linking each post with the videos that we received. Here is just a screenshot of the blog that captured in 2012 by Internet Archive. And you can see it's truly a shame we were not able to capture the blog as its original look. And so a quick mention about the copyright issues, which is a commonly asked questions. The creators of these raw footage interviews are still the holder of the copyright of these materials. And they are signed a license with Duke University Library. It is a Creative Commons, non-commercial, share alike 4.0 license, which means usually most nonprofit educational use are allowed. If you are using something other than those, like I listed at the bottom, that you will consider seeking permissions, like if you are considering doing any performance, publications, exhibitions, or films, you will consider seeking permissions. You can contact us, we'll help you, connect you with the filmmakers. We also have a suggestion of a citation that you can use when you are using that in your publications. And here is a format of the citation you can consider to use. So for the library, the challenge is really the bilingual content and the bilingual metadata. So the Duke, right now, the digital collection is part of the Duke depository, which is not a craft system for the memory project. We have to fit in the existing system. It's an English language-centric environment that we have to fit in, which means the regular batch loading process is challenges because we have to manually input a lot of things. And for this, I'm really grateful to the many colleagues in Duke University Library that's involved in the project from at different times, at different stages. The fact that we continue to publish batches of the interviews into this collection, it's already amazing during the pandemic, I mean. So here is the digital collection that I'm going to show you in a minute. And so when you reach the individual interview page, when you click documents, you will see all these documents that I have mentioned. One thing I have to say is not every single interview will have all these documents. Some of them may only have a transcription, some of them may only have a blog, and some of them may only have an email. But this example I'm using is from an interview done by Zhang Mengqi, who you're going to hear from herself very quickly, in which we have everything. So let me show you the database. There we go. Here's the database. So, and you can see that we have a total of more than 650 interviews included. That's a lot. That's a lot of interviews. You can have several ways of browsing in this database. And one thing, since we're mentioning so many filmmakers, and I still remember to today that when I initially talked with Wu Wenguang about how to organize everything, he told me that the most important are the people that they interviewed. So we should arrange everything around the people the villagers, basically, the elders. But here, for the purpose of accessing all these material, you sure can browse by interviewer, which is the filmmakers. And if you click more, you come up to the screen. It looks a little bit messy because the pinyin form of the name and the Chinese character of the filmmakers are mixed together. And what you can do is you can do a sorting from A to Z. And this way you see only the pinyin, or you see only the Chinese characters. So if I click that, and I will go ahead and click Zhang Mengqi. And if I go ahead and click Zhang Mengqi's name, I will see everything that she has in this database. She has done more than that. And this is which is what we have here. And let's go ahead, and this is the screenshots I use in my PowerPoint. And this is a lady, her name is Yu Tang. And of course, you can watch it online. And if you click download, we have the licensing term right here, and you can download the form. You can download the whole video. And if you click the documents, you have everything. You can see we have a transcript in Chinese language. CN means in Chinese. We also have it in English. In Zhang Mengqi's case, you can see she has all these different documents. And if everything is available, we usually just choose to translate the transcripts into English only. And of course, if you click sharing, there's a different form that you can use. You can embed it, or you can just use a permanent link to refer to the item. If I scroll down, and you can see that there's information, there's a brief introduction of the interviewee. Yu Shantai is particularly interesting, and we didn't include it here, but she was a barefoot doctor in her village. And so you have so all these brief information, but you also have the rights, the copyright issues right there for your information. So that's one way of accessing the interviews. If I go back to the beginning, you can also access, you say, I don't know any of these filmmakers, but I'm more interested in, interviews in certain provinces. You can do the same thing, but you actually you will find more convenient if you go down to the bottom of this page. They say this is the source collection, which is a memory project. And if you click the collection guide from here, you actually come to the finding aids, or the collection guide, we call it, as you can see. And you can see all these provinces that's already included in the published collection. For example, if you click Hubeishan, and you can see Diaoyutai is a village that Zhang Mengqi has been going back to. And if I click that, you can, if you mouse over the village, you have a brief introduction of the village. And if you click that name, you actually have the video. And if you click the item, and you go back to the database itself. And that's about everything I want to say, a very quick and brief introduction of the digital collection. We are also doing other projects to make this, to make use of the materials here. Doing some digital humanities project is a project in process, and hopefully I can share very soon. And now I will pass back to Guo-Juin to introduce some wonderful filmmakers who have been participating in this project, to hear them tell you the stories. Guo-Juin?
Yes. Okay, so before I introduce the three filmmakers who are going to tell us more about the project, let me just mention this. Well, if you have any questions, please type it into the Q&A tab, using the Q&A tab. And then after the three filmmakers presentation, we will be happy to answer the questions you have. So this is just some technical. Okay. So the first filmmaker I want to introduce is Zhang Mengqi. Zhang Mengqi actually is one of the very first members of the Folk Memory Project, starting actually, I think, in 2009. And she's actually trained as a dancer. And then has since then, after she joined the project, she had made a film every year. It's amazing, incredibly prolific. And her films had also won many international awards. And the most recent one, actually, her latest film, Fairy Tale at 47 km, just won the major documentary award at the Busan International Film Festival. So I'll just turn the floor to Mengqi, who will tell us more about the project.
Okay, thank you, Guo-Juin 老师, and thank you, 周乐老师. Hello, everyone. I'm Mengqi. So I'm a little bit nervous because Guo-Juin introduced me like this. I'm very nervous. As they said, I call myself I'm the first generation of the Folk Memory Project. So before this event, before this tonight's speak, I prepare for what I want to say. And today, not only my story, there's also a new filmmaker, Yu Shuang and Gao Ang. they will present what's their story during the focal memory project. We have some rehearsal before today. And in the rehearsal, at first time, reminded by Yu Shuang, she told me, I always pronounce our project name wrong, because I always say, this project is the focal memory project. But Yu Shuang kindly reminded me, this is not focal memory project, it's a folk memory project. But for myself, I think, of course, it's about ordinary people, it's about personal story, oral history, personal memory. But for myself, as a filmmaker, as a creator, I'm always focused in something. So I always thinking maybe this project for us, for the filmmaker, is kind of like the other name is focus your memory, focus your village, focus your personal grow up, focus the people you know or you never know in the village. So I will share with my story in my computer now. So I pronounce again, the folk memory project is beginning 2010. From the summer of 2010, Chaochangdi Workstation, an independent art space in Beijing funded by Wu Wenguang and Wen Hui. We start the focal memory project, which original to focus on the history of the Great Famine. We are listening about the archive before the Zhou Lou Laoshi says, and who we are, who is these people, why they are doing this project. We are the students, we are the farmer, we are the dancer, we are the filmmaker, we are the teachers, we are the civil servants. I still don't know how to pronounce this name, civil servants. We are bookstore staff, we are freelance, but we are all hungry people because we are hungry about history. We are hungry about reality. We are hungry about the world we never know. So we start to back to our own village. This is Li Xinming. She is from Yunnan province. She back to her own village. She grew up in this village and grew up until teenager. She go to the urban city, become a nanny, or they like how to say it is go to working in the city. But she become a filmmaker and she back to the village to ask the old people, her grandma, her grandpa, about their personal story. And this is Shu Qiao. He back to his village in Hunan province. And Luo Bing, he also back to his village, also in Hunan province. This is Zhou Xueping. She back to her own village in Shandong province. She also making 5 films in her village about his hometown, about the people, the old people and the younger generation. And this is Wu Wenguang. He's not talking today, but you will see him later. He back to his own village in Yunnan, but it's not his hometown, it's the village he joined the, how to say, 知青年代 to become a teacher in this village. This is Zhang Huancai. He's the filmmaker in the village. We call it villager filmmaker. He is filming his village until now is almost 16 years. His village in Shanxi province. This is Shao Yuzhen. She's here today. You will see her later. She's a villager in Beijing, and she also filming her village the same year, 16 years in her village. And this is me. So all the story become like this all the stories start from this photo. For me, because I'm the generation who never interesting about history, because in my when I in the school I learn dance, I learn art, I learn everything, but history is not the most important thing for me. My family always push me to look forward, to looking future, but not talking to me to look back to the village, look back what you come from. So this is where I come from, a village in Hubei. This is my father's village in Hubei province, Suizhou city, Indian town. Name is Jiaoyutai village. But I given this village another name, 47 km. So this village, I didn't born there, and I'm not grew up in this village. I'm kind of outsider back to this village because I lost my local language. I can listening, I can understand a little when they are speak slow, but I totally lost connect with those people and the village life. So when I back to my village, I start to interview the older generation, including my grandpa and his generation's person, like this old lady. Her name is Lei Xianzhen, and this old man, his name is Guo-Juin Hong. I'm not a student of the history. I only have a camera, and I took my camera back to my village. I start to ask them about their own story or own memory. So I first time to listening what they told me, how they're feeling about the hunger, how they are scaring, how they are getting cold in their memory. I start to have connect with those people's experience. So I start to think what I want to find or what I learn from them is it about truth or is it about reality? Because they are living in this very cold and look like dying village because there's no young generation in the village. Only you can see the older generation and very, very small kids. I think I'm the only one young people stay in the village more than a week. So I saw people, they are survive. They are not like living, they are still survive from this disaster about Hungary. We are not only about interview their memory, the Hungary story, we also collect information about the villager who died during the Great Famine. And we also raise money in the village to build the monument for the people who died in the Great Famine. This is the village, my village. I invite the villager come to witness. Today, we built this monument for the people who died. And you can see there's some kids in the village. I also invite them to talking with them about the memory. Before I doing this, the memory is still in the village. The people, they are talking about some people dying in 60 years before, but they never talking to the next generation. And the next generation, the kids, they are not interesting, like myself before I joined the Folk Memory Project. So all the participants, not only myself, there's also like before the Zhou Xueping, Li Xinming, Luo Bing, we all went back to our own relationship village to interview the others and create the documentary films. As well, we are making the theater performance about their memory, also about our self-memory. I will show you some clips about the performance and rehearsal. This is from the 2010.
往前，竖起，竖起，竖起，叶菜，叶菜，叶菜。
我叫邹雪萍，1985年出生，家在山东省滨州市阳信县商店镇邹家村。
我叫张梦琪，我出生于1987年。
补充，我第一次知道我爷爷的名字叫贾福奎。
补充，我第一次在村子里待这么长时间。
补充，我是一说他是饿不死的那个。
补充，2010年我第一次回到自己的村子采访老人。
补充，我第一次知道我爷爷的名字叫丁明发。
So this is our performance. We call it Memory Hunger. All the participants went back to our village, not only making film. Also, we are trying to do something in our village. I call it plant myself in the village. Like I grew up with the new generation again in my village. Those are the kids, the new generation, the future of my village. We become a very good friends. We are playing together. We are creative village libraries together. Some people send us the book, and we are doing the performance together. I teach them dance class because I learned dance from I learned dance like little kids, but when I back my village, I first time to know in the people in the village, they don't know how to dance, and they don't know that the body can dance. They don't know the hand can be free and raise up. So I try to take my dance class to share with them, to dance with them. And it is very beautiful memory for myself. And we are also screening in the village. I took my computer, and later I have a project, and I show in my film in the village. And this girl, she name is Fan Hong, and I took her to visit the older generation because the kids, the two generations, they don't meet in the village. They know each other, but they never talk to each other. Like something like they have a war between the older people and the kids. So Fan Hong start to join the portrait for the grandma and grandpa. We are making the dream world in my village and also her village. And the kids start to try to use camera to interview and also making their own film. Every filmmaker in Focal Memory Project, we are making one film a year, has become a way to write our own history by making film and making performance and also writing, the real writing. We have the email group. So myself, this year is the 11 years for myself. I created the 9 film in my village. You can see the film in Duke Library. The new project in 2020, an art space built in my village. We called it Blue House. It's kind of flexible space. It can be a museum, book library, and we have a stage. It become a performance place, and we're building together with the kids, making a garden in this building. So all we do we don't know what we can do, but we always trying to do more things beyond the thing we already know. So we have this archive for 10 years. You will see in the Duke Library, and we are still making our film and our performance. So this is the story from my side. You will see other story from the other two filmmakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mengqi. This is wonderful. So I want to introduce the next speaker. Her name is Shang. She's one of the younger participants now, and then we're very proud because she actually got to know about the memory project when she was a student at Duke University in my documentary film class, actually. So, and since then, she has participated after she received her degree in cultural anthropology, and she started to participate in the Chaosangdi Workstation, the Folk Memory Project, in the winter 2019, and has been conducting interview about personal memories and filming the everyday life of her home village, Huangpo Tan, ever since. So, Yushang is gonna share her experience with us now. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Professor Hong. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Yu Shuang. As Professor Hong said, I'm a recent graduate from Duke, so I'm really excited to share with you guys what I learned from the interviews and through filmmaking at my village. So I have a video as my PowerPoint. So I learned about Folk Memory Project in Professor Hong's class, and because I wanted to make films, so I took one semester off to go back to my father's village. This is the main road, so people live on two sides. And I didn't grow up here, so it was unfamiliar for me. And you know that I'm more interested in the filmmaking aspect of the project. So when I first went back, I didn't do any interviews, but very soon I realized it was very hard for me to continue my filming because I really don't know a lot of the people there. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know where else can I go to. And that's how I started to do the interviews as the other creators in the project. And it was really the interviews which I was grateful because the interviews really brought me back to the village because people started to know who I am. They started to know what I'm doing here. And I kind of become from like a wandering ghost in the village into a real person that is present here. And also through the interviews, my filming finds ways to continue. In order to do interviews, my body kind of navigates the village in a very different way to different people's households, and I see happenings on the road. And also my friendship with the people I've interviewed actually brought me into a lot of the social spaces that I didn't know existed, like the Buddhist sutra chanting group, the Bible reading group, and Communist Party members' routine meetings, or sometimes it's often street gossipings about what happened in different households, about the elections of the village heads, people's ideas about the new village projects and the developments and so on. So this is me following my friends into a church. And I wanted to introduce you guys to Wang Cuijuan. She's my good friend now, and she's a very important person in my work in the village, because when I first started to do the interviews, I tend to ask questions about historical events like the Great Famine, the Cultural Revolution, because that was like what I thought I wanted to know. But Wang Cuijuan was the first person, despite my questions, she told me a very personal story of how she married her husband. And it was a lot of long and vivid conversations in her family, like inside her own mind, and also several trips she made to Huangpo Tan village to see that boy and his family. And I was very stricken by the story because I see this young girl making a very important life decision, and I saw all these things that mattered for her at the time. And also I saw the way she imagined her life. So I was thinking maybe my interest in history, deeper down, it's my interest in these people. I wanted to know about their childhood. I wanted to know how they grew up, how they have different kind of experiences, maybe including which later became known as historical events, and also how they grew old, how they became who they are. So later in the interviews, I started to ask more questions about life stories. And also when people begin to tell me something like about everyday happenings that does not have obvious historical significance, I became more patient to listen. And earlier this year, I finished my first film based on what I did in the village. And the Old Mei in Huangpotan village, Mei means younger sisters. So it's about the women. And why women? Because I realized a lot of the men, they can tell me very vivid, very detailed public affairs that happen in the village in time sequence, which was amazing. And most of them remembered the specific years. But when I think about the stories that stays with my heart, it was actually a lot of them came from the women, and they were not as clear or not as logical. Like one woman told me when she was a little girl, she saw some people rob the households and they burned up stuff by the river. But she didn't tell me when it was. And she kind of mentioned the land reform, how people confiscated the landlord's stuffs. And she kind of mentioned the Japanese soldiers during the World War II. And I was thinking, oh, maybe it could also be the bandits, like in local areas, which was common during the time. And I was thinking, does it mean that her story, although I liked it a lot, does it mean it's less valuable in terms of informing me something about the past? And does it really matter like when it happened? And I think maybe for her, it didn't matter when it happened or under what policy it happened. Like for her, I think she told me the story maybe because she wanted to share like the vulnerability of her everyday life that she experienced as a girl. So I was feeling like that these stories, they are telling me a different way of knowing the past. So maybe the past can be known as a sequence of events with cause and results, which I was more familiar with, or maybe the past can be feelings, accumulated feelings, or feelings that stays in a person's mind, feelings that overlap sometimes get mixed up. So my film was kind of about how to understand these feelings, how to understand the histories as experienced by these women. And later on, for the last few minutes, I wanted to show some interviews from my film. So for me, they are very different stories, but there's something similar, like there's some feeling in it. And I wonder, maybe for you guys, it will be. Like, I wonder what it is for you guys.
两天晚上嘛不特别掉啊，特别掉是没弄呀，那每天呀，不能我养呀，养年啊，都你啊，都年，到难到个了样子。
这事情不有眼听来了，呱，中午就让我早就碰见了个接。到那个事嘛，呱听了后说，我给起来了，我不来了，那我不带不来了，我家都绕个呀，
Okay, so that's my part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shang. This is amazing. Yeah. Our next speaker is Guo-Juin. Guo-Juin is a PhD candidate in documentary filmmaking at Newcastle University in the UK right now. So her practice-led research interrogates contemporary forms of observational filmmaking as an embodied, self-reflexive, critical, and creative practice through her own filmmaking. So she's been doing film practice and filmmakers with other filmmakers in the folk memory project for a long time. And this research also challenged the naive and outdated approaches of the observational documentary and explores more experimental forms and observational filmmaking rooted in embodied creative practices as a form of looking, being, and presence. So we're going to have someone who is both from the scholarly intellectual perspective and creative practice. So Guo-Juin, please go ahead and share with us your thoughts.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Guo-Juin, and I'm a filmmaker and participant of Folk Memory Project, and also a PhD candidate at Newcastle University. So I'm doing filmmaking and research in my grandparents' village, Jiaoxing village in Henan province. So now I'm gonna to share my screen to show you a clip of my village here. Yeah, I involved the Folk Memory Project after Wu Wenguang and Zhang Mengqi had their spring tour at Newcastle University, because we all filmed in the village, so I involved into the project. And then I started to have communications with fellow filmmakers through the email group. And it actually gives me a broader insight of my research about Chinese studies, Chinese independent cinema, and the documentary practice study. And before I was like film as an outsider, like observer in a distanced way. But after that, I started to rethink about my research and my filmmaking practice. So I got inspirations from them, and then I started to interview the villagers about the history in my village. And during the winter of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, and I went back to my village and I started to interview the old people. And I did, but I only did 3 interviews. And the pandemic broke out. I have no choice but left the village and back to UK to study my research. And then the world entered the lockdown, and the lockdown caused great limitations to face-to-face communication, of course, to the embodied practice in documentary filmmaking. And in the meantime, all of my fellow filmmakers, they were filming in their village. So for me, it's just I couldn't see when I can go back to my village again. That is really frustrated. But luckily, we are a group of filmmakers, and in January of 2020, Wu Wenguang proposed writing through 2020 in the email group. So we started to every filmmakers, we started to film, and if we are not in village, so for example, myself, I just started to film myself, and we stayed together, try to break through these strange situations, and we started to experiment with diverse workshops online, and it's kind of a way to establish a deeper and broader connection within our community and to the public. And the first online activity is Zhang Mengqi. She proposed the online Sunday yoga and reading workshop. It's kind of, we want to stimulate the ongoing thinking and awaken the feelings towards to the human body in this isolated environment. And we do yogas in the Sunday morning, and after that we started to read a book together. And then on April 6th, on 2020, we start our reading raw footage online workshops. It's like we got each filmmaker got 10 minutes to show their clips, and then the other filmmakers will give them feedbacks. And after all the filmmakers screened their clips, we got another 1 hour to discuss all the footage together with certain themes. So, for example, we discussed embodied practice, the authorial presence, and the author's position, the relationship between the film subject and the filmmakers, etc. It's really helpful for me actually to find the structure and the what I want to express and what I didn't think about during the filmmaking practice. We are having the second round of reading raw footage online workshop this year, and this actually the day before yesterday is our last third times of our second round of these online workshops. Later, depending on our online experience, we started to hold a workshop called Image Writing Workshop to the public. In these activities, the participants is not only the filmmakers of folk memory project. We got people from different backgrounds, and they are filmmakers, teachers, villagers, college students, and white-collar workers. A lot of people like from different backgrounds, sexes, and ages. So like each workshops, we will have like around 50 persons to attend, and we met actually like after this workshop, we got new filmmakers, new participants of this project, and we're gonna meet them later. And based on our online experience through the whole 2020, and we created an online documentary theater called Reading Virus. So I'm gonna show you a clip about it. على الفورمه مال هذا صاحب الفرنسي الشيعة ايه ان شاء الله باكر ادزه وخابرك بعد ولا والله الجو لا صور شتاء هسه صار شتاء مو 100% بس الى حد ما مو صيف ولا خريف اي طبعا هسه شوف And after all these workshops, for me personally, I reached a deeper understanding about rural China and filmmaking practice. So at the time, I couldn't go back to my village. I looked at the footage of my village I filmed in the past years, and I started to rethink my position in the filmmaking practice and in this world. So after that, I made a first-person documentary to reflect my filmmaking in rural China and my position in this world. This is a clip of my film.
这是我小破，我好给他逮到一只人，老是给我讲没到村里头的事儿。我听我小婆说，小魏也在年轻时候干活，从楼上摔下来了，脚丫摔坏了。这是我小魏呀小婆的孙儿，我到现在也不知道他叫啥名儿。这个素材我看了可多遍，我在犹豫到底要不要用。我当时好像想了一下，是继续拍，还是帮他赶走苍蝇。
Not just like me make new film, and in the meantime, 8 films were finished in the end of 2020, and these 4 films are the filmmakers' first film. For me, Luo Luo and Hao Yongbo and Yu Shuang, we made our first film. And of course, not only the new participants, other filmmakers in the Folk Memory Project also continues to make their films in 2020. Shao Yuzhen, Zhang Mengqi, Hu Tao, and Wu Wenguang is gonna say hello to you later. And after all the films were completed, we organized online screens for the new films because of the pandemic. We can't screen them up. We can't screen them in a particular location, so we find a way to screen them online. We found a streaming platform called Bilibili, so we screened all the 8 films online. And after that, we just aware that there should be a way to distribute the Chinese independent film to screen them. And then we established this online cinema. So until now, every Friday is our screen night. Actually, just before this conference, we had our online screen of Wu's film. There would be, for example, in the past, when we screen in the cinema or the art center, so it's like fewer than 100 people for each screen in the past. But this online cinema, sometimes we could reach 2,000 people at each screen. And actually, for me, it's very amazing. And yeah, this is my presentation today. And today, several of our filmmakers also attend this meeting, and they're gonna say hi to everyone. So let's welcome them. And the first one is Wu Wenguang.
Hello, I'm Wu Wenguang. Nice to see you all here.
Yeah, and Shao Yuzhen.
我是邵玉珍，来自北。
Hello, my name is Shao Yuzhen. I'm from Beijing.
来自北京顺义沙子营。我从2005年开始拍摄记录我的村子，参加民间记忆计划16年。
Hello, my name is Shao Yuzhen. I'm from Shaziying village, 顺义 district, Beijing, and I started to film my village and participate in the Folk Memory Project since 16 years ago. Thank you. And 洛洛姐.
Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to attend today's meeting. I am Lolo. I am from Liyi, Sichuan. I was lucky to join Cao Changbi's email group in April 29. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lolo. And the next one is Hu Tao.
Hello, my name is Hu Tao. I'm from Shanxi. I'm joined the folk memory project in 2012. Thank you.
Thank you, Hu Tao. And the next one is Liu Tong.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liu Tong from Anhui Province, China. I joined the folk memory program in 2021. Now I am creating my online work called Family Photo. Thank you.
Thank you, Liu Tong. And the next one is Liu Xiaoqian.
Hello, I'm Liu Xiaoqian. I come from Baijiashan village of Shanxi province. I enjoyed the folk memory project in January this year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Xiaoqian. And the next one is Wei Youhua. Youhua哥. Maybe there is some technical problems. So let's welcome the next one, Zhang Dun. And Youhua ge will come back later.
Hi everyone, I am Zhang Dun from Wuhan City in Hubei province. I joined the Folk Memory Project last year. It's my great pleasure to meet all of you.
Yeah, I think there is some like the network is very poor. So let's welcome the next one, Dai Xu.
Hello everyone, I'm Dai Xu. I joined the memory project this year. Now I live in Kunming.
Thank you, Dai Xu. And let's welcome Yu Shuang. Let's welcome her come back. And Meng Qi also come back. Yeah, this is all of our members come attend this conference today. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you guys. This is really wonderful to be able to meet some of you, at least virtually. So thanks for all our presenters. And I think we have about 18 minutes for Q&A. If you have any questions that you want to ask, please type it into the Q&A. And we have already a couple of questions that we responded. Lo, you want to take up those questions and say what they are and what the answers are?
Oh, the question and answers, thanks, Guo-Juin, and it's amazing to see so many faces. I'm so glad to join everybody virtually this way. So the question has been coming from two directions. One is more library work, asking us about the archive and the different formats of the videos. And I can tell you is we are doing long-term preservation plans for all these videos, both in their original format. We have, I think if I remember correctly, more than 12 or even more different formats of these videos. And we are also migrating some of the formats to new kind of format when the old one become obsolete. The technology just develops so quickly, we run into that issue already, that we encounter formats that cannot be played already. Also, we are questions about where all these provinces that's included in the in this project. And I think the collection guide that I shared earlier has really very good way to see quickly all these provinces. I think on there is about 13-ish provinces already. As we process more, we're gonna add more interviews to it. Totally, there are more than, and all the interview conducted are more than just from those 13 provinces. The other direction is basically asking how do they connect with the filmmakers directly, and how to, for example, contact Mengqi directly, how to contact Guo-Juin directly, or etc. I think Guo-Juin already shared some of that answered the questions like that. Yeah, and please continue sending your questions, and it can be in English or Chinese.
And yes, we have also we have the WeChat, how to say it, 公众号, WeChat 公众号. If you use WeChat, you can connect us through 草场地工作 B 站. So this is our new blog. Our old blog, 周乐老师 already shared, is already finished, but we have this new 公众号 草场地工作 B 站.
So, any questions? But I actually have a question that this is sort of touched upon by Guo-Juin, is that during the pandemic, of course, this is such a big deal. It's almost 2 years now. So are there specific, any experience or lessons that you would like to share? Because I know that through the pandemic, despite all its restriction and constraint, you actually developed and opened up new possibility. For example, the online cinema and so forth. So I don't know if any one of you would like to say a bit more about that, either as a group or as something for you yourself personally.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Guo-Juin. Actually, I will answer this question first as like my personal experience, and every other of our filmmakers, if they will share it, you can just say it later. And for me personally, this all the online experience we've done this year give me a great possibilities for my research and for my filmmaking. As we said before, my research is like I kind of like evaluate the Chinese rural policy through an observational documentary. So it's a practice-based research. I use documentary as my research method. But after this year's online experience, I just combined with my previous filming experience in the village, and also all the discussions and all the activities we've done. I just reached a deeper understanding about the rural China, and I just can't to do that observational documentary anymore. It's not my it's not what I thought about the Chinese village as the real situation in China. So yeah, it's kind of like so gave me more possibilities to do my research, actually, to find out the relationship between me and the filmed subject, and my own bodies in the village and my own positions in the village. Yeah, this is my personal experience, and any of our filmmakers want to say something?
Thank you, Guo-Juin, and I think we can move on. Thank you so much. Move on to a question actually addressed to Guo-Juin.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Could you give more details about using the collection in classroom activities and your own research?
Yeah, I think this is really fascinating in terms of the uses of the archive. That's why I said in the introduction very briefly that actually it's through the uses of the archives that I think the memory and the history live again. So for myself personally, I use the collections in my documentary and audiovisual culture classes in the way to actually think about the way that we engage with audiovisual field in general have two major components. One is what I call collection, the other is curation. So the project, memory project is very specific and unique, and I personally think is one of the most amazing way of handling our experience, not only just history and oral history and such, but it actually is our engagement with the audiovisual world through the two major modes of operation, collection and curation, that we actually have a lot of lesson to learn. For other colleagues, I know that people have used the collections to teach in classes that are very specific about the idea of trauma and archives in East Asia context. And there are also classes in history using these collections to engage in not broadly history broadly speaking, and particularly medical history, for example. And then also professors in art history have been using this archive quite extensively. So this is just a sort of, yeah, so it's just really an incredible way that in challenging us in terms of how we can engage with an archive that is actually alive and growing, and how do we bring it into our own relevant field individually. Yeah. So there's another questions about, would like to know, could you please share with us some of the reactions of the elders to your project? I think that's really interesting. Yeah. So in your experience, when you interview and your interaction with elders, what are your experience and what are their reactions? Anybody?
I think for me, it's always a lot of variety. So, and also it's not only the elderly reacting to me, but it's always back and forth. So sometimes there are really good conversations. Maybe I had this conversation with the interviewers, and he or she really enjoyed talking about these memories. So he enjoyed talking about it, and I enjoyed listening to it. So it's a worthwhile experience for both of us. And sometimes the elderly, they are concerned because in China now we have Douyin, so I don't know, TikTok in China, so all these short videos that are uploaded, so they would imagine, are you doing Douyin? And I would just tell them about why I want to do. I would try to explain to them what is documentary, why do I want to listen to their stories, because if they don't tell about it, we won't know. And so it's a lot of these kind of back and forth. So I have expectations for them, and then I realize, oh, maybe they are different from my expectations. And same, I think they are having some expectations about who I am, and then later they adjusted their imaginations of me. And I think it's in this back and forth, we're having more and more conversations, and I think we're both getting new knowledge about what we are doing.
Mm-hmm. Can you also talk about, I know some of you would show your films to the elders afterwards, and how about their reactions there? Moichi, you want to say a little bit about that?
Yes, I think the reaction about the older generation is very slow. From my experience, when I ask them about the painful memory, they are always shocked. Why you ask me these questions? Because nobody wants to know about our memory, because we're nobody. We're just person who living in the village. We're just normal people. Why you are asking me about our experience? But when I back to the village after 1 year, 5 years, and there's old lady, until I back to village the 5 years, she start to talking with me her own personal memory, like giving birth. So it's become like I'm not interview them. They just want to talk with me about their story. So it's a big change after 3 or 5 years. So when I show the film to them, they've certainly know, oh, you are making a film like this. Our story can record by your machine. So you will share our story to another villagers. So they are getting start to know, oh, you are doing a job like this. So it's new things for them. So it's very interesting, and they know their life, their story has power, and a lot of people are interested.
Thank you, Mengqi. I think we have a lot more questions coming in, so we'll move very quickly. Then, next quick question come Addis One, and asking whether all the filmmakers encountered any political obstacles in the project, since some of the topics might be sensitive in China. Maybe we have one person answering. Just political obstacles 有没有政治上的一些困难？因为这个题目是有一些敏感的，或者吴老师说，或者孟琪 ，Yeah，Thank you， 孟琪。吴老
师。
孟琪，你可以回答。So 孟琪 you can.
I just want talking about the blog, because 周乐老师 shared the blog story. The blog closed in 2016, 2016年, so we lost the blog. So we cannot put our work with the oral history part in our blog. We have the other way to show our work, and we have this internet, we have this like Zoom meeting, and we use the internet to explore our project. So from now, we are here. You can see us still continue. So this is the answer is we are here, and more people getting to know what we are doing, and we just like Dawn introduced, we just have a screening online, because independent filmmaking or independent documentary is forbidden showing in the cinema in China. So my film is always showing in a small bookshop or small coffee shop, something like this. Even not recently year, we can show in our film in a university. Before you can show it, but now it's forbidden. But we found that the Bilibili is a new tool for us. So today we are showing Mr. Wu's new film, and it's 第38回 38 screening for today. So this is my answer. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Mengqi. We just feel what a shame that we didn't get to archive the blog in time. You know, we have procedures and plan and everything when we're about to start, and to our shock, it's all gone. So we are having more questions coming in, but I think I can combine the two persons' question into one. One is from Zhang Jiayu, the other from Guo Yijiao. So basically they're asking is, when you are going back to the village, is it your village? How do you re-establish that relationship in your village? And how do you gain trust of these villagers to talk to you so openly, which I think is such a strength in this project. So any one of you could elaborate on that.
So I would like to answer this question. It's a very interesting question. We used to meeting this question because when we went to the university or somewhere to share our project, the people used to ask the question, how we find the village, because the way my last generation is left the village a long time ago. So it's difficult to go back to village. How we go back to village? So it's a common question for Chinese new generations, including me. I was born in the Kunming city, but my father came to see Kunming from the Sichuan province, the village in the Sichuan province, after 1949. It's after the 解放后, it's the after liberations. So I never went to my father's village, home village before. So first year in the 2010 and in the memory project start, I went to the village. I was the farmer during Cultural Revolution. So this is the first village I went back. And then after a couple of years, I went back to my father's village. Even it's a very strange people, strange space for me. But I think it is the good question for the Jia Yu. She asked question, it's the we are go back to the village. It means go back to memory, go back to something we lost a long time ago. We go back to the root. Root, yeah, the gun. It's the yeah, the somewhere we based on. So I think it's a very good question for us. For Chinese people, even we are living in the city, we live in somewhere, but we know where we are from. So when we go back to village, when we go back to looking for the father or mother or father's father, where they came from. So I think that it's good for us to think we found something is very important for our generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Wu Laoshi, so much. And I'm so glad you jumping in and answering that very important question. And we actually have reached the end of the workshop where time passes so quickly. And I want to thank everyone, all of you, for attending today's workshop and asking questions. I know I have one more question that we didn't get to answer, which is a question to me. What are the challenges? Yes, there's a lot of challenges, I can tell you. There's a lot of pleasure knowing all these wonderful filmmakers working together with Guo-Juin and some other faculties here at Duke and many amazing students at Duke. It's a lot of challenge, but a lot of pleasure, and learned so much. And thanks to everybody who make this project a reality here. And also thank all of you for attending today's talk. And we feel free to contact all of us. For me, my email is up there. And feel free to continue contact us for more questions. Guo-Juin, do you have any final, Hu Tao, or you want to say something, Hu Tao? I see your hand raised. 看你举手。
没有。
Okay.
Well, so just to say this is for one important part of our collaboration is that we used to be able to invite the project team to come to Duke every other year, but the last few years has been a little bit crazy. So like last time it came was 2019, and then this year, of course, it's not going to happen. But we're hoping that very soon we'll able to have the team in the US at Duke with us again in person. Yeah. So I think this is wonderful. Thank you so much. This is such an amazing attendance. Thanks again to Alex for all your help, and thank, of course, to all the filmmakers for your wonderful work.